I'd like to also bring into the program here, we have George Samueli. He is a fellow at the Global Policy Institute of London Metropolitan University and author of the book Bombs for Peace. George, thank you for joining us here. Who would have thought? You know, what the media is saying is that Trump is a patsy of Vladimir Putin with no paper trail that I can discern here. A lot of innuendos here. But we do know that Bill Clinton came to Moscow and spoke to Renaissance Capital, and he walked away with a very, very fat check here. But no one is saying that Hillary Clinton is in bed with the Kremlin, are they? Go ahead, George.
No, that's absolutely right. It's an interesting issue that at the start of this election campaign, the theme on Trump was that this is a dangerous, reckless person. As soon as he's in the White House, he's going to have an itchy finger and he's going to launch nuclear war. The story has now changed. My God, as soon as he's in the White House, he's going to pick up a phone, call up Putin and say, what can I do for you, Vladimir? So if that's the case, then why do we need to worry about war? Great. I mean, quick summit between Trump and Putin, and a lot of problems are going to be solved. No, I mean, it's an amazing thing is that how the media have been endlessly going on this. They're reading from the same script. I mean, it's like somebody wrote the same article and they've been issued to, well, here's your copy, Julia Ioffe, here's your copy, Timothy Snyder, Paul Krugman, you ought to read from this. They're all saying the same thing. They're all citing the same few little bits of evidence, a few ambiguous compliments that Trump and Putin extended to one another. There is no evidence whether there's any sort of serious relationship between the two. I mean, Trump has some business interest, but is it as serious to argue that his business interest with some Russian investors is the most important part of his business empire? It's absurd. And again, as far as the Russians goes, are their dealings with Trump the most important part of the Russian economy? I mean, it's ludicrous.
Daniel, it's very interesting because the record does show is that Donald Trump did make a number of attempts to enter the Russian market, primarily in real estate and hotels, and he had zero success. I mean, if he has such strong connections with the Kremlin and the people around Putin, you would think that he would own, the main streets of Moscow, but he doesn't. His competition's there, but he's not there. He hasn't done any serious business whatsoever in Russia. Go ahead.
Yeah, how dare he try to do business with private business people and build a business empire? You know, what is he supposed to be doing? The funniest comment I got on this whole thing was an article on Defense One, one of the most absurd things ever. Putin weaponized WikiLeaks. And the whole article was just hysterical nonsense. But at the end, someone had a great comment. It said, okay, so let me get this. The Democrats are mad that the Russians fixed the elections by publishing documents showing how the Democrats fixed the elections. And I just thought that captured it perfectly. And now nobody's talking about the elections being fixed, they're talking about Putin. And let's not forget the DNC hired this expert.
No, Daniel, say a little bit more about that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say that the DNC hired this expert to prove that it was the Russians. The company is called CrowdStrike, and everyone's citing them as the expert that proves it. But if you look at the founder of CrowdStrike, Dmitry Alperovitch, he turns out to be a fellow at the Atlantic Council, which is funded by NATO and is one of the most anti-Russia, pro-war outfits out there. So this is not someone that's an objective view of this whole thing.
Ray, it really gets down to, because what they're trying to do is to tie Trump and Putin together. So essentially you have a choice between Hillary Clinton and Vladimir Putin, which is nonsense. But that's how politics works, okay? These spin masters, they can come up with the most interesting things here. But the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump questions the security status quo around the world, and he's picked up on NATO here. Having member countries pay for their own defense is not an unreasonable thing to ask. And when that terrible interview, so-called interview with the New York Times, that he was pressed about the Baltic countries, he never said that NATO shouldn't invoke collective security. He never said that. But at the same time, he said, why don't we reform it? I mean, that's such a taboo right now, and that's how they're going to go after him. Go ahead.
Well, that's right. He has touched a raw nerve here.